How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I just got back from physical therapy.
Oh,
Uh
I've been doing a
yeah.
lot of that too. What's wrong?
I'm just trying to work on my posture. So I've got a guy at this great physical therapy spot who's just helped me with that because, as the years go on and you're playing on stage like this all the time, it's kind of need to do some of that work, to correct and
Absolutely.
strengthen your core and stuff like that. So
There's
kind
an
of be
element to what we do and you do for hours at a time that is like athletic performance. And
totally,
it's when
totally.
you're not a kid anymore, you start to realize that. I know.
Yeah.
I get back spasms and stuff. The only time it happens is when I have a gig. It's just from, but
Oh,
I wonder
yeah.
if for you, switching instruments, I wonder if that adds an
I'm
element.
sure it doesn't help to have the guitar on my back, at the
Yeah,
show.
just went back yesterday and today since we were going to be doing this and watched the 2019 Peach Fest thing.
Right.
And I was at that. But
Sick.
was
Yeah.
that show as important to what started happening to you guys as it sort of felt like to me?
Yeah, I would say 100%. That was kind of the show that rippled out in a big way, especially, our following fall tour did extremely well, better than like we were playing all those like small clubs and bars already in like early 2019 and 2018. But in that fall of 2019 after Peach Fest, like all those shows sold out, which was like the first time that had ever happened. And so we were just like slammed in these small rooms for that full tour. And it was sick. Like I think that was kind of the energy that just kept building, it was like the Peach Fest kind of got a buzz going. And then just like people were getting shut out of these really small shows and that energy kept building and people were talking. So yeah, it all spiraled, and that was a big show for us.
You guys have had this growth that's been um on the one hand like steady and organic but like it's but just at a really accelerated rate. It's really cool. I mean, you and Billy Strings are the two that I've it and in a way, as far as I can follow it, both of you I know he did, and I think you kind of ended up benefiting career-wise from the pandemic in a weird way, didn't you?
Surely. It would kind of gave us a chance to catch up to the growth that was happening. We were about to like go on like a sold out tour in April of 2020. It was like our first like headlining, like sold out tour, and it was at rooms that were like over 1,000 people. And I honestly think that the pandemic kind of gave us a chance to like finish an album. We hadn't put out an album and it had been like 3 or 4 years and we were working on one, but like when you're going on tour or like doing weekends and then coming back to work on an album, it's like kind of hard to finish an album. You're just like always in flux. So it gave us the opportunity to finish Shenanigans Nightclub, which was our second album, and then also just catch up to like, okay, like these are the pieces that we need to bring in for the future because like we didn't have the right personnel, so we were like we caught up and got our ducks in a row a little bit.
Personnel
uh,
in terms of like support crew or the band?
yes, support crew, we were lean and mean, and then like we were like, oh yeah, like we definitely need a tour manager. Oh yeah, this is like how touring on a bus works. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes, even just in terms of the finances and the planning and all of this stuff that like we were just had no experience with, and it was everything was moving a million miles per hour. So it was kind of a nice
Um,
chance to catch up and get on our feet when everything came back.
so one of the downsides of this kind of growth, and then I'm going to get back to the album, which is where I intended to start,
Yeah.
uh, but one of the downsides to this kind of growth is that it can lead to separation and alienation. I mean, you know, the forced sitting next to each other in a van has its downsides, but it also does keep you on the everyone pulling in the same direction kind of thing.
It
Uh,
does.
Yeah, has that
Yeah.
been an issue for you? Like, and have you had to make any conscious decisions like of how to overcome that or not? Has it been natural?
I think there's a lot of beauty of like we definitely spent a lot of time in a van together, and like we came up with so many hilarious like fun ideas. Like I just have a massive note of all the ideas we used to just come up with in the van. So I think it's just like it's a matter of, you know, the good thing about it is that like when we're on the road, we're all pretty similar in terms of like what we like to do. Like we're not really partying, we're pretty chill. So there is a lot of the being on the road where it's like we are just still hanging out and we're all in the same bus, and it's like it feels like the van just with a little more space, you know? And we got like video games set up in there, you know, we're doing crossword puzzles, like we're all hanging out, and it's just it feels very normal and natural.
So Everything Must Go, the song and the album, both, because it's the first song of the album, starts with, I mean, the very first sound you hear on the album is um, like a loop drum machine.
Yeah.
It has almost like a and so I'm wondering how intentional that was. Like, did you decide you wanted to set the tone that that was going to be a big part of what you're doing?
Yeah. I would say starting with that track was very intentional. In terms of like it felt like a fresh step into new territory of recording. You know, a lot of the tracks on the album are like pretty classic and like don't have a lot of like electronic sounds or too many weird effects. But that track, you know, in the same way that Dripfield was on the previous record, felt like you know, this is like a statement we want to be making. And it felt right as the first track of the album because it was like, well, here's a statement right off the bat that like, you know, there's really cool arrangement stuff on that, different kind of effect, like the vocal effects are really interesting, and there's a lot of like electronic elements, and it felt like a fresh take for us. Like we really love that stuff, and take a lot of influence from modern music that uses other things like that. So it just felt like this is the freshest take we have, and like let's put it first.
Was, we talked, about how the growth of the band and whatnot. So as part of that, each album that you make, each set of new music you make, has more, excuse me,
Bless
um,
you.
thank you, more expectations, more people waiting to hear it, more people paying attention. Um,
Right.
does that, like, are you able to put that aside and just do what feels right to you guys without being self-conscious?
I think we are. I think there's like such a nice element of like being in the studio, especially with our producer Dan, because he kind of like will bring you right, he'll just bring you right to the moment where you're like in the studio and you're just doing what's best for the song. And like when you're working with, well, like when we're working with Dan and tracking something, it feels like basically nothing else matters. Like we're just working on the music and the song and focusing on that. And then he kind of like takes care of the rest. You know, it's like he'll be like, "Oh, like let's add this element. Let's add this element." And like that's, you know, him being his role and being a sculptor in a way of the band and in the studio, you know. So he'll be like, "Oh, Peter, go play like this thing on the Mellotron. We're gonna put this here." Or like we'll toss out an idea, be like, "Oh, Dan, I really loved like this little part." And we're really just thinking about the song and the craft of the song and less so much about like, well, yeah, this will be like, you know, oh, this will be a great moment for the fans and people who follow along. And of course that thing come, you know, that'll come up. It's like, oh, well, you know, they'll appreciate this. But then there's also moments where it's just like, well, yeah, this is how it has to be because like this is the best way for the song.
Um, yeah, so I was gonna ask about the songwriting process. It sounds like at least with some of the newer songs, you're really crafting them in the studio. Like how, I guess, sort of what percentage of them are you doing that with, and how collaborative is the songwriting process versus someone bringing it in and then everyone learning a part and playing it?
Oh, it totally depends. So, um, like things about Dustin Hoffman, Iguana Song, those two in particular, in your direction, like I guess those three in particular had never really been played by any of us at all before we like went to bring them, like went to record them. So, day of, we're working with Dan, like playing through the song on like a piano or a guitar, and we're kind of like talking about like, oh, and then like we could add some space here, or like we could do that thing here. And we try and figure out the arrangement first and the form. And then like once we have those elements, as you play through it, people will like come up with the different ideas. It's like those songs, there was no real like bass part, so it's like Trevor's kind of like coming up with his bass part on the spot, and that's kind of cool. You have like those moments of just like you can create like an iconic bass part just in two takes of a song, and you have this great idea, and then if it's all just flowing, it ends up being pretty special.
Mhm. And I guess um, the more you work together, I mean, each time you're going to make an album, you've played, I don't know, maybe 200 or more shows together
Right.
since the last time.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I would think that that has to lead to more and more familiarity. And then also working with the same producer, I would
Yeah.
think, does it feel like he's a member of the band during the times you're in the studio in terms of
It
his?
does. Yeah, it totally does. His opinion has so much weight and he brings such a unique perspective that we all like, we respect him deeply. So I think that adds a lot to the process. And then we also have like Matt Campbell is there and he's like a songwriting partner with Rick. So like they write together and he comes to the studio because like a lot of the songs like he's helped, he's written. So it's like we get his perspective as like this as a songwriter on certain tracks where it's like he's not even playing an instrument, but he'll be like, "Oh, like we should try this," or like so it's cool to get all these different perspectives because I value the opinions so much.
Mhm. Um, in that same way as you're putting songs together for you, I mean, let's just say like for Trevor, there's no question that what he needs to do is come up with a great bass line. Rick has to come up with a guitar part and a vocal melody.
Right.
But you could be playing a guitar part or a keyboard. Like it
Right.
does it present itself like this is where I need to sit down and play something like a piano or do
Yeah.
you sometimes try different things and figure out what works?
Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of like work just, when I write songs, I pretty much just I go like right into demo mode essentially. And so I have a lot of experience of being like crafting songs by myself and kind of like knowing what what kind of elements will work, like what to bring in certain times. I've just That's just something I've always loved to do, and I've been doing it for like, 15 years, just like on my computer, just like plugging in
Mm.
songs and different stuff like that. So, um that is just kind of something that now, like, if a new song comes to the table, it's just like, well, this feels like a guitar song, It's like, well, we can have two guitars, or um, like I can, it's like depending on like what I'm hearing, I'm like, okay, this is like obviously piano, or there's some times where it's like pretty obvious,
But
what should, at least for me, what should be played.
what is your I mean like self-image as a musician? Because usually people, in my experience, musicians have such a attraction to their instrument and such a association with I am a guitarist. The
Oh,
guitar
sure.
guitar is part of my arm. I think in chords and
Yeah.
So do you have that and if so, with which instrument? Like is
Good question. I I think like the one thing I know for sure is that like I could go up on a and with a guitar, um, I think in almost any situation and feel extremely comfortable. Um, But keyboards, like if you threw me on stage with a jazz band, I'd be like, hold on a second. Like
Right.
that doesn't I don't know about that. Like if you told me to go sit in with, like Julian Lage, who is just like an absolute jazz guitar icon and the sweetest guy. Also, we played with him. He was amazing.
Yeah, and
But
you should
like,
publicist.
you know, his music is like, it's very, there's a lot going on. Like it's just, there's but yeah, at the same time, it's like I love piano. I think it's like my favorite instrument ever invented. I think it's like the ultimate instrument because you can do so much on it. So piano, I love. I love clav, synths are great too. So it's like I really do love it all. I
Yeah.
even love bass a lot. I love playing bass. So it's kind of like when I'm up there in the show, it's just kind of like reading the room is like a big part of my job and like reading the music and kind of like, figuring out what to play based on every moment of the show and trying to like be free flowing about it, not being like, if I was too much of like, I'm a guitarist, then I would probably miss a lot of the important moments where I'd be switching to a keyboard that could like really elevate the jam or the song. So I think like originally when I joined the band, I was like that. I was like, I'm a guitar player, but I think like a big part of my evolution has just been like abandoning that and like learning to let go of like a label of myself and just kind of like exist in the moment and just try and be as musical as I can at every junction, you know?
Right. Well, it's interesting. I mean, existing in the moment is always the key, right, to success in music. So it's interesting because I feel like, and this is just me projecting, I guess, into what your brain would be like in that situation. You have
Right.
to be a little bit ahead of the moment too, don't you? Because you have to
Sure.
be like, oh, okay, at this next change, I'm going to switch instruments. And that's a
Right.
little bit different than like at the next change, I'll play this lick or I'll sit out for a measure or whatever. It's
Right.
just, right? Does that make sense to you at all? Is that like a
Makes
part of
makes complete sense. You're absolutely right. Because like, and that just comes from experience, like the more we've played together, the more I can feel like certain energy shifting, or like I could feel like the band wants to go in a certain direction. And then like I can anticipate that and make that move. And like on the good nights where like we're really clicking as a band, like those moves are like always the best move. But
it?
then if we're not clicking, it's like, oh wait, that definitely wasn't it.
Right.
Like switch back to this other thing or like, but it's just a more experience as a band, like the more you can anticipate that. And I always loved like, you know, I've been a fan of Fish for a long time and like a big influence was Paige McConnell, at least for keyboards, because when they were jamming, like and the keyboards play such a big part in Fish, um, more so than I think like many other bands in the improvisational spheres. So like, he's very much a pillar of that band. And I feel like when he would make the right switch at the right time, it like the energy would just explode to me. Like when I was listening back to it, I'm like, that is so powerful, and I think
Well,
that power of like knowing, like just making the switch of instrument right at the right time is it's really awesome. Like I like being in that role and having that
yeah.
kind
And
of like that responsibility.
well, and something else that Paige does that I'm sure you've been inspired by, and I wrote a book about the brothers and sisters era of the Allman Brothers. So I went
Yeah,
really, really deep listening to the live shows of 73 and 74 with Chuck. And
yeah,
I appreciated more than I had, which um, but the same thing that I was saying about Paige, that Chuck, his soloing is obvious. Everyone knows what a great soloist he is.
yeah.
His comping and rhythm playing, if I could call it that, behind Dickie was
Mhm.
really, really inspired. And
Yeah.
and in that period, I feel like Dickie was like the best guitarist in the world for this moment. And a lot of that was Chuck, what Chuck gave him to play off behind
Yeah.
him as well as the soloing, and definitely something that Page does.
Mhm.
And that's part of your role too on both instruments. I mean, because but I think like as guitarists, we know like we understand like what a rhythm guitar can do to a lead guitar, but
Yeah.
it's easy to overlook what a keyboard can do or piano can do in a same exact concept, but a little
Yeah.
differently. Um,
Yeah.
so does that make sense? And does that part of your brain operate the same on both instruments?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, I know what it feels like to stand out in the crowd and be like shredded by an awesome guitar solo. So, like, just from that perspective alone, it's like, well, if I'm supporting that guitar solo, like, it's just, that's the ultimate, like, it's a huge responsibility to be like fully present and listening and like and reacting and just like that's all it is, but it's just on each instrument it's the same, and as I've played more keyboards, like I've just gotten more confident at like making those moves um on the keyboard more fluidly without thinking about it, which it's just been really liberating, because now it's like on the guitar I felt like I could, I felt like I was there, but I have gotten better at that too. It's just, it's I
But
wasn't
it's
really
it's
a
not
guitar
just
player.
reacting to the solo, right? It's also giving the soloist something to react to.
Sure.
Which
Yeah.
is both. They're very interconnected. You
Yeah. But
keep
it's
throwing
like
a
if
log
you
on the
hear,
fire.
yeah, if you hear like a searching moment, then you throw out an idea that could lead, that could inspire something, something clicks. You know what I mean? It's like it's all just it happens so fast, and it's like it's a really like it's high intensity. It's like all these moments are just like so instant and so reactionary that you just have to like the more you play with somebody, the more you like understand like how they think and how they play and how they like want the music to go. And I think that only can make you a better rhythm player.
Um, One of the things that makes you guys stand out, I think, is Rick's voice. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean, in the simplest terms, he's a really good singer, but
yeah,
he has clarity in his voice and range, and that does stand out a bit in our world.
totally.
At what point did you or the band sort of realize like that you had, I think of you as it's not a secret weapon, but maybe it seemed like it at first. Um, does that make sense? Like, so at what point did you guys start to realize that you had this thing?
Oh yeah, that was, I mean, I think, it Rick is definitely like he's the first person to tell you that he's just like, he hasn't always been a great singer, and like it's something that he's worked on like and continues to work on like pretty tirelessly. Like he takes it really seriously. Um and he's gotten a lot better even since I've been in the band. So I think it's just at a certain point, it was something that a lot of people told us, like, oh, your song's really good and your vocals are really good. And like that is different than a lot of what's going on. And I think we kind of realized that, when I was in the bands like early on, and it was like, okay, well, this is definitely something that sets us apart. Let's try and lean into this and make it as good as possible, kind of just to like put ourselves in a different sphere.
And your harmony vocals are a part of that as well. Is that something that you guys have also, did you spend a lot of time to get that right? Because if you're doing it right, then the average person doesn't even notice you're doing it.
Totally. Well, yeah, we do it all. I mean, we practice harmonies all the time, That's like it's always been a thing. I think like in other bands I've played in, like jam bands and stuff like that, it's like vocals kind of take a back seat, because it's just so much fun to jam and play your instrument, and you're like, the songs are almost and like the vocals are just like a way to get to the jam and stuff. And it's like I think with this band, it's like so the opposite. Like we work on singing like almost, pretty much as much as we work on everything else.
Mhm.
So it's just another aspect of the band that, we take really seriously, and the songwriting is really good. So it's like when the songs are speaking really well, it's like you want to make sure you can properly sing them, and it's no easy task, None of us are like born gifted singers where, we just like came out of the womb and had it. So it's like it takes a lot of work, and it's something you can't really see. It's almost like it's a muscle that you just
Right,
have no control over. Like you can't just see how it's doing. You
right.
just have to keep working
Well,
it and practicing.
I mean, Trey told me the last interview I did with him that, it took him decades and decades until fairly recently to realize that
Yeah,
he had to work on singing the same way he worked on guitar playing, and that he does now, but he didn't for a long time. And
yeah.
people do have this feeling, even Greg Allman said that, like he was resentful sometimes that people thought that it was like a natural gift.
Mm.
Obviously there's an element of that, but I mean, he really worked. I mean, he practiced and he listened to people and
I mean, he was fantastic, like fucking one of the best.
um at the Soul Shine benefit concert, I thought your guys' set was fantastic.
Thanks.
For a lot of reasons. I mean, just on this, it was just really good. But also, you embraced the concept of like what it was, I thought, and had, I think, a guest on every song.
Yes,
Uh,
on every but all songs but one, I think.
the very
Yeah,
first, maybe, yeah,
yeah.
and it was really well thought out, like who would play on what, I thought.
Thanks.
And I know that you guys have played the way it is for a long time, right? So
Yeah,
how cool was that?
it was sick, man. Been a Dave Matthews fan for a
Yeah.
long time.
I
And
expected Bruce Hornsby to walk out, I really half expected that, but yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was just so special, and like he was the most down to earth, normal guy I've ever met, and it was just like it was incredible. Like he was just down to hang and make music, and he was like so awe-inspired by all the guests, even though like he's so awe-inspiring himself. And I just really loved like how humble he was. And I mean, the man showed up at like 12 p.m. on that show day and like did sound checks with every band all day.
Yeah.
Like he worked all day, like just to make sure like the show was great. And then
Right.
like played the show and then still played his show. And
Right. And
you
that's,
have the documentary Greatest Night in Pop?
yeah. Yeah.
Dude, it just reminded me of the Lionel Richie kind of vibe in that he works so hard to make that whole thing happen. He's like he's up all day, he's up all night, and like I just loved like he was like a steward of that whole thing, and I just felt that like Dave Matthews kind of held that same energy at that show, and I was like, this is right. Like I respect this guy a lot.
And that's a little insight into why he's been so successful, right? It's like, um,
Makes sense. Yeah,
did that whole experience of the Soul Shine feel like I was gonna say like a coming out party for you, but just did it feel significant to you, like to be part of that and to have your own set and
totally was. It was like, wow. I mean, all the names on that show were, spectacular and people we look up to. And playing Madison Square Garden for the first time is, you're never gonna forget that. And it was like a really cool way for that to just happen. And even though it was a short set, it was like bang, bang, bang. It was like super exhilarating, and the room was sweet, and everyone was so nice. Like we were just so humbled and grateful to be a part of that.
and you're all localish guys, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
imagine like each of you individually or maybe together even have seen a lot of epochal shows there in your life.
definitely,
Is that accurate?
definitely, absolutely. So, it definitely holds a special place in our hearts. Growing up and um, three of us grew up in Connecticut, so it was like an hour away.
Right.
Uh,
I'll send you some like interviews with Trey I've done that are he's so reflective now also about like the mistakes they made along the way.
totally.
And so you have the advantage of learning from their mistakes, hopefully, and not repeating them.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, do you look at it that way? And that could mean musically as well. I mean, or not, or business wise, or whatever, personal relations, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you
I mean,
guys? You seem like a pretty thoughtful fella, so I'm wondering if you
yeah,
do that.
we definitely think about that stuff and you know, we had like the honor of just like going on tour with Trey Band and like hanging out with Trey for like 2 weeks, which was pretty sick. And you know, he just imparted so much wisdom about like, you know, he's very much in that same phase on that tour where he was like, oh, you know, make sure you guys are doing certain things to just be smart and you know, he told a lot of stories about how things like got out of control backstage for them and there was too much partying going on and all these things like kind of spiraled and put the band in a really bad place like end of the 90s. So I think just hearing that from him and I mean what a blessing that is, you know, because like you don't often get that kind of wisdom and advice from somebody you look up to. I mean, it was like one of the most special tours ever, you know.
Yeah, that's incredible. And
Yeah.
and and even before that, I think it was before that, like when he came and played with you at Radio City.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you did, and Weir's played with you. I mean, can you describe like what it's like to be embraced by these guys who have been sort of your heroes and role models?
It's totally surreal. You know, it's like literally crazy because like, you know, I was at these shows when I was younger in high school and like I was like, man, I really want to be up there like one of these guys and like playing improvisational music and you know, being part of this scene, like this would be a dream come true. And then like when you know all of a sudden those guys are being like, hey, like want to come play some music? You're like, that doesn't feel real, you know? It's kind of crazy, man. So we're just learning how to like um, you know, think that doesn't seem like a reality. Like learning to cope with that reality is pretty interesting. And you know, at the same time, it's like we're out here doing our thing that like we're inspired to do and like following our direction and our path. And I think like that is it's beautiful. It's like it's amazing that all these things can coexist. It's you know, it's amazing that you could like like write songs that eventually your you know your heroes will play on and it's like they'll
Yeah, and
they'll
it's
think is cool. Like that's crazy.
and dealing with that is in a way is like another aspect of living in the moment, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't because you don't want to get like too puffed up about yourself, but you also don't want to be like too subservient
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
accepting you as peers. Like you need to just accept it yourself and right. I mean, is it and it's
Yeah.
same as, yeah, if you're playing a great solo and you start thinking the solo is great, it's sure to fall apart, right?
Sure to be terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So true. Yeah, so true. I
Um,
go
to go
ahead.
back to the album for 1 second, Give It Time. Was that, I mean, it seems, my listen through the album, it does seem like kind of one of the more accessible uh,
Yeah,
songs. So was that an easy choice to make it the single?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was like once we had fleshed out the song, like there was an early iteration of that song we actually tried to play in 2022, like it was like half done. And it was just like, well, no, this isn't feeling right. So we didn't do it. Um, and then like coming back to it, we came back to it like when we were like getting ready doing practices for the cap last year. And like something just clicked. And it was like, whoa, this song is really cool. And like I was sitting there at the dinner table, like at one of the nights we were practicing, and like Matt was over and talking it's like to Rick about the song because they like co-wrote it together, and like they're like passing back and forth ideas, and we're like all just sitting there at the table, and it's like we kind of like figured out like the arrangement of the song, all just like sitting there as a group and then like went up to the chateau where we practice and just like played it and it was like wow this is hitting like we should definitely like this song's gonna be great. We should record it. The album was like the album had, a lot of it was already recorded, and it was like, well, but we gotta like go record the song. So like we played the cap, we played it there, and then like a month later we went to the studio and tracked it. And then, it was just like it just had to be on the album because it was like really strong.
One of the things that Trey told me last time, I wonder if this resonates with you at all, is that, he likes to try songs out live, and he'll now do it with both Fish and Tab.
Sure.
And that there are some songs, I wish I could remember the examples he gave me. I'll look it up, but that he felt so good about, but they just never, like, he'd play them live and the reaction's completely flat. And he would try it and like change this or that, or change the band. And
Yeah,
that he was saying that there was a period where he couldn't figure it out, and now he's just like, well, song doesn't work the way I thought it would, so move on. Have you
right.
had that experience at all, or the opposite, where something that you maybe don't even think that highly of ends up really resonating, and so you will maybe dig in to try to
Yeah, I
take it
think
more
I think
seriously?
I think it can go both ways, you honestly don't know like the full spectrum of like what a song can do until it's out there doing its thing. But I also feel like if a song doesn't necessarily work for Goose, like at least none of us like have like, solo careers, so we don't even know like, oh, it'll work for the solo band. Like it's just like, okay, well this song's like not meant for this zone, but maybe it'll pop up in some other way at some other time. And
Mhm.
like I think that's okay, and learning to work with that and just like accept it for what it is, that's a beautiful part about songwriting because it's like they are your babies, and it's like, well, not every kid is meant to go to college.
Right. Or, like Steve Miller, I think it's Fly Like an Eagle. Like the riff was on a song on like his first or second album that didn't quite,
Wow.
and he just brought it back. I mean,
He's
he
like,
wrote it, so he found it like another. He knew the riff was good, but the song didn't quite ever
wow,
ever do anything. So he
I gotta
used,
check that
and
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
The other night, someone from your, I guess, management team, I think I forget who I was talking. Someone upstairs I was talking to before it started told me that you guys gonna move away from being the jam band label and stuff. But your big event, which was sort of an album release
Mhm.
celebration, you did
Yeah.
an hour of free improv. And so, I mean, after we had that conversation, I was sort of expecting you guys to come out and like play the album straight through, note for note or something. And you
Yeah.
go 100% 180 from what you did. So, is there any like I don't know, like is there any conflict there, or how you guys think of it? Is there a split between what others are?
Oh, I mean, I think like, you know, we're I don't know who said we're definitely not trying to jam because we're definitely still trying to jam.
Well,
I
they
think
didn't
there
say
was
you
like
weren't trying to jam. I think it was more like trying to get out of the jam band label.
yeah. Well, I think like I personally like I don't, labels are labels, and like I don't really care like what someone calls us, necessarily. Um, but what I do care about is like, okay, well, are you just gonna write something off because of the label that it is? You know? That to me feels wrong. It's like judging a book by the cover, kind of same mentality. So, um, I think like one thing we are trying to do is expand, and like get to new audiences. And I think like our studio albums are a great way to do that because, that's typically more like what the indie rock and kind of those kind of camps are into studio albums. So it's like, well, if this song is like feeling like a really good studio cut, then why can't it live with those other indie rock bands,
Yeah, and by the way, the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers made some really damn good studio.
They did.
Um, and Fish did too. And I think that, they could have done more. Really, Fish to me,
Yeah.
never they were like on right when they were. getting more digging into it more, like with Farmhouse and Billy Breeze, things were starting to fall apart for them. And so, but I think if, in a slightly different version of them, that was sort of where they were headed. I think that's what it felt like.
Yeah, I feel that way too, and I think they've had a journey with studio albums that has run the gamut, like, and up to the point where, like, I think on this most recent record, they kind of just like went in for a few days and just played the songs and then put it out. So it was
Well,
like,
sort of, but I'm gonna I'm gonna email you this interview, my last interview with Trey, because he
okay,
discussed the process. That is true in terms of how the band did it,
okay,
but Trey went through an incredibly
yeah,
intensive process to get the songs to the point where
they could do that.
started that. Yeah, which is, well, I love it about him. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, he works extremely hard,
yeah, I mean, he recorded a full solo acoustic album version of that album.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
literally could have been put out as a solo acoustic album, not just demos
yeah,
or uh,
yeah,
a part of the thing we love about him. It's you can't separate like his intensity and work ethic with all this, uh,
yeah,
to everything else about him,
yeah, absolutely.
Um, well, listen, it was really great talking to you.
You as
I'll
well,
email you.
man.
Yeah, and good luck with this. I look forward to seeing you on the road somewhere soon.
Yeah, man. Where do you live?
I live in New Jersey, Maplewood, New Jersey,
Okay, great.
in the store.
Oh yeah, please do. And yeah,
Yeah,
it'll be awesome to see you.
yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time.
Okay. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.